This is Ben Bostrom. It's obvious there's no swell in town and nothing to surf. You're stuck listening to Soupkast.
Welcome to the surface of Superbike Planet.
The SuperbikePlanet.com podcast, Soupkast, is brought to you by American Honda.
Greetings. Welcome to SuperbikePlanet.com's podcast, lovingly referred to as Soupkast. This is Soupkast number 8 for July 23, 2006. In this Soupkast, we chat informally with Soup's MotoGP correspondent, Julian Ryder, writer of the popular Ryder Notes column, which runs daily on the MotoGP weekend on Soup. Enjoy. Soupkast is with Julian Ryder, our GP correspondent and longtime GP writer of several books, magazine stories, former editor of several magazines in England.
One or two of them successful.
Julian, you've had quite a hectic travel schedule in the last, 6 weeks or something like that. Can you tell us what it's been like from your perspective as someone who does all the Grand Prix and is a working member of the GP paddock?
It's 8 races in 11 weekends, and that includes Laguna and China. So there's enough travel and jet lag in that for anybody. We had 3 races back-to-back in Europe. We have this race back-to-back with where the hell we were last week, Germany. And if it's tiring for journalists and hacks and photographers, what's it like for riders? And probably more crucially for mechanics, because they're the guys who end up making the mistakes. Something gets bolted up wrong, something doesn't get tightened up, and the situation can be unpleasant. I know Rossi has made his point quite forcibly to Dorna, saying this is crazy. Mm-hmm. We had the same thing at the other end of the season last year when we did Malaysia, Japan and Qatar or something in 3 weekends. Went home for a weekend, then went to Australia and came home via Turkey. And I was sat in the commentary box in Turkey wondering why I felt shattered, and worked out in the last month or something we've been on an aeroplane for 5.5 days. Mm-hmm. It's not good for anybody.
Can you give us a synopsis of your background, how you got started in racing and in publishing and in broadcasting?
Publishing's easy. After I graduated with a lousy degree in chemistry, I got a job with the Institution of Electrical Engineers Publishing Department, an ancient and august institution of professional engineers, and I was a sub-editor on the Learned Society magazines, the latest academic papers. That's a great apprenticeship for a writer, because you can have 3-hour debates on what's hyphenated, where a comma goes. It's an old-fashioned skill, a proper old-fashioned sub-editor. Great grounding. Then I worked on the member magazine of the institution, then went to the Design Council in London on their magazines, and then finally somebody gave in and gave me a job on a motorcycle magazine.
Okay.
And from there on, it's, I had my own magazine on racing called Road Racer. The bank manager made me stop it. But fortunately, satellite television was just coming in the UK. I'd been invited in to see Sky Television, working on Grand Prix. The second time I went in to see a programme being made, the commentator didn't turn up, so they gave me a microphone. That's it.
And you did World Superbike for several years, right? Before you did Grand Prix, right?
Sky Television picked up World Superbike for political reasons to do with European Broadcasting Union and the common market. They had Grand Prix first. But Rupert Murdoch's channel wasn't allowed to have this percentage share. Grand Prix went out the window with that, went to Eurosport, which was free to air. So Sky said, what the hell we got? We got no motorsport. And they found World Superbike. And it was 93. It was the first year of Fogarty versus Russell. It was a gift from God. I mean, for the first 3 weeks, people are knocking you down in the street saying, where the hell the Grand Prix gone? But after a couple of rounds of Foggy versus Russell, we were getting, hey, this Superbike stuff's not so bad, is it? And we went on from a start of nothing to have audiences of 100,000 at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, it was amazing, an amazing period. And then you made the step to Grand Prix.
It looks like a brilliant piece of career planning. Of course, it was a total accident. Sky stopped showing World Superbike. I hadn't got any work. Rang Eurosport, the channel I work for now, said, give us the work, give us the Superbike job. Do one of my mates out of his work, as you do as a freelance. And they said, no, of the Grand Prix. So I moved to do Grand Prix the same season that Valentino Rossi came to 500s. It looks like the most fantastic piece of career planning, and of course, as usual, it's a complete accident.
Falling backwards into it, I think, as they say in the US. You mentioned Rossi. I wonder, from your perspective, as someone who's seen that much racing, how really do you rate him? Do you rate him, and someone with your background in a historical perspective, as seeing a bit of Ago, seeing Roberts, seeing Sheen, and people like that, how do you rate him?
I never saw I saw Hailwood race. I never saw Saarinen race. I did see Ago, but I was probably too young and stupid to realise what I was looking at. Probably the most naturally talented rider I've ever seen was Freddie Spencer. Kenny Roberts, Eddie Lawson and Wayne Rainey right up there. But Rossi is the combination of the personality of Barry Sheene, the innate talent of Kevin Schwantz, and the calculator mind of an Eddie Lawson. It's the combination of all of those talents in one racer. Murray Walker, the great English commentator, many years a Formula One commentator, but basically a motorcyclist in background and in spirit, went into print a month ago saying he's having to reconsider his long-held opinion that Mike Hailwood is the greatest motorcycle racer there's ever been.
Wow.
And if Murray Walker is reconsidering that opinion, then the rest of us should reconsider it, I feel.
Exactly. What do you see as his weaknesses? Do you think Rossi has any weaknesses?
No, I haven't seen one.
Really?
Again, he doesn't make the same mistake twice. He doesn't appear to be overly... I mean, he's confident, as any racer is, but there's no overweening ego there. It's the recent book on Barry Sheene pointed out that dear old Barry didn't like just to win. He liked the other bloke to lose. Mm-hmm. And you don't see that in Rossi.
Right.
Except maybe with a couple of exceptions who he particularly disliked.
Gibbernow.
Interesting with Valentino, isn't it? He doesn't waste ammunition on people who he doesn't consider a threat. Mm-hmm. Sometime during the Donington Grand Prix, I've got the quote somewhere, he remarked, I followed Hayden for a few laps. I think the pressure's getting to him leading the championship. He's making mistakes. And it's, this is very Valentino. All of a sudden, Nicky's in the crosswires.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Sheen book. I saw your name in Michael Scott's Thanks. Really an interesting book, and I was surprised as to how honest the text was regarding Sheen. It wasn't hero worship. And
it's not a hagiography. No. I mean, anybody who even brushed up against Barry in passing knew he was not a one-dimensional character. Mm-hmm. When we launched the book at Donington, the author Mike Scott gave a wonderful speech in which he pointed out that Barry had several love affairs with Stephanie, with winning, and with himself. And I think that that is
right. And who knows which one he loved the most?
And hey, show me a racer who doesn't. No, I think the book is and I did the picture research. That's my interest in it. But I think it's a remarkable piece of writing.
You did 2 books with Carl Fogarty?
Yeah, but did a paperback experimentally, then we did a second edition with 2 chapters banged on the end and in hardcovers. It's the same book.
So you kind of got him into publishing and showed him what the potential was. It kind of seemed like, from my perspective. What was it like to work with him?
Carl's always been just hideously honest in that he doesn't filter anything for correctness, or you get what he thinks at the millisecond you ask him. And it might be a total contradiction of what he thought last time you asked him, but he would regard that as being honest. That, at this moment in time, I think this. Snap, you get the answer. He doesn't consider it or refer back to what he told you last week or anything. He would probably regard that as BS, actually, knowing Carl. Mm-hmm. He's a much mellower man than he used to be, but he's still a scary specimen.
Yes.
That
glare.
What a race face. I did a function with Colin Edwards at a rowdy event in the north of England before Donington Park, and he just referred. Somebody asked him from the audience, "Where are the Brits? Why aren't the Brits doing well?" He just said, "You don't like winning enough." And then he said, "Except Fogarty," and you're back to that. Why you race?
Right. England hasn't had a world champion since Sheen, or a GP winner. Is there anything on the horizon?
We've had GP winners in smaller classes,
right? Not in MotoGP,
but not in 500 Motor Grand Prix.
Right.
There was a crop of young racers who came up from the 125s in the UK a few years ago. Chaz Davis, who's out of a job in 250s at the moment. a guy called Leon Camier, who I've been saying I think is, if he stops growing, he's about 6'2" now, who impressed the hell out of Japan at the 8-hour last year on the Moriwaki. And he's gone back this year. He's British Supersport champion. And the third man in that little trio was Casey Stoner. And those three guys spent a couple of seasons in the UK racing each other every weekend in 125s. The Aussies would say that the Brits were chasing Casey. Might be true, but they were damn close to him. And there are, there's two talents there that may not be fully exploited. I don't know. I'll point you at Bradley Smith in the 125s, 15 years old, who scored points in the last 2 Grand Prix in his first season. And he looks like the genuine article. And there's a couple of other British lads, a Scottish guy called Kev Coghlan, who's in the Motor Grand Prix Academy in Barcelona and racing in the Spanish 125s coming up that way. There's 1 or 2 coming.
It's always seemed to me that England sort of parallels the United States in the regard of their national series is really strong, and riders can make a decent living there, and some might say an easier living without trying to go Grand Prix. Hence, that kind of neuters the GP effect of each nation.
That's certainly one critical aspect. The other one is if you're English, British, there are no privateer teams in the paddock.
Right.
So why the hell should a Spanish or Italian team pick up a Brit? Now, Dorna have, in the recent years, forced Italian and Spanish 125, 250 teams. If you want to race, you're a new guy, and Spanish teams turn up with the money and the bikes. They're the only people who can. And they've been told, yeah, fine, but you've got to put a Northern European guy on the second bike. That's why we've seen the odd Brit, Swede, Dane, Dutchman. But it doesn't really work just plugging a guy into a team with a team don't really want. Hopefully you're going to see a British 250 team next year with 2 riders, and maybe more than 1. And that, for me, that's the way we've got to go. We've got good kids in 125. If we don't get them on a Grand Prix bike, they're going to go Super Sport, and they're probably gone.
And they're probably or stay in England. And are the races are on BBC or what?
They're live on terrestrial. It varies. Yes, ITV, a terrestrial channel, does do usually 1 race as highlights, 1 race as live. That's Superbike class. And Sky TV shows the same evening, the whole damn lot, 125, Super Sport, Super Stock.
So they get really good exposure in the home market.
Yeah, right? Not bad at all. Yeah. Not bad at all. And you, as you say, you can probably make a living riding there's some very professional, very well-funded Super Stock, Super Sport teams. So you can make a living. And if you're a kid off a council estate or something, you haven't got the luxury of deciding, I'd really like to do this. But if no one's going to pay you, you've got to go and do the other.
Let's talk a little bit about England. I think I made it from south to north once in 9 hours. Is that possible? It seemed like 9 hours, but it was quite a bit of jet lag in there. Yeah. Had the foot down in the car, and we needed...
Where from? London to?
Something like that. It was about 10 years ago, so I'm kind of grey on it. And I was driving on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, that always helps.
The thing that's amazed me, in such a small country, you can, let's say 11 hours, you can go north to south. There's got to be 11 or 15 racetracks in England.
Yes.
Or more.
Yes, none of them any good anymore, unfortunately.
No, I'm not sure I'd go with that, but I think Brands Hatch is probably, for a spectator, the best racetrack in the world.
Yeah, no question. I'd agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think I've ever seen a better one for spectators. But the paddock's tiny. It's dangerous. Certainly if you go out on the long circuit, we've had some very nasty accidents there. The clearways back onto the straight, the barriers hideously close, and. Cadwell Park, when Gregorio Lavia, a Spanish rider who's the reigning British Superbike champion, saw it, I hear his opinion was highly entertaining.
I'm sure.
And he's in print in the UK recently as saying the best 2 tracks in the UK wouldn't get on the calendar in Spain. Wouldn't be considered good enough. Wow.
That's a damning statement. That's too bad, because there is so much enthusiasm and so
Absolutely.
Many racetracks. It's too bad something can't be done to monitor.
It is noticeable that when our young 125 guys go to the Spanish Championship or the Academy, it takes them a little while to get going because they're unused to tracks that they can just race on. And if they fall off, they're not damaged.
Right.
I can think of several young racers who've done that at British tracks, and when you're 15 or 16, copping a compound fracture of the leg does tend to set you back a bit, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But you've got Donington Park,
Silverstone.
Silverstone.
Yes, we've got Donington. It is the least developed of all the Grand Prix tracks we go to, with the possible exception of Laguna and Phillip Island. I mean, it doesn't hold a candle to places like Barcelona, which is...
right, or Mugello, or
right. Or Assen. Le Mans a bit seedy, come to think of it. Jerez is good. Valencia, of its type, is fantastic. The only stadium track we go to. Phillip Island, along with Mugello, probably the best racetrack in the world. Motegi. There's a lot of this. And then there's the weird new stuff like Qatar and China and Turkey. And there, Turkey, what a track!
Right, in Turkey. The thing that it just seemed that there's so many components there that could be perhaps melded into something. You've got the enthusiasm of the British public. You've got so many racetracks, and you've got Dorna now involved. It's
it's weird that nothing's happened, isn't it? And, but we need maybe some of the British teams that are in the paddock in British Superbike are sort of looking at World Superbike and maybe even Motor Grand Prix paddocks to come into. And that's what we, as an English fan, a British fan, that's what we need.
Last subject, let's talk about Laguna Seca.
Yep.
The first time you came here did you come for any of the early Grand Prix?
I came for the launch of the GPZ 900. 1984.
Yeah, that's the race that Kawasaki told Wayne Rainey that they didn't need his services anymore at the racetrack.
Well, at the launch of the bike?
Correct.
Bloody hell, I didn't know. I remember meeting him there because I broke my hand on an ATC up in the field. I was mincing around pit lane with a great cast on my hand on the second day. Rainey asked me very politely what I'd done to myself, and I told him, he said, hey, gee, those things bite you in the ass, which I heartily agree with.
Thank you, Wayne. Your thoughts on the circuit, on racing in America, from your British perspective or worldly perspective?
It's funny, I went up to Neil Hodgson and when I first got here last year for the first Grand Prix, when it was a big club racing in many ways, I said, welcome to Cadwell Park, probably our most hillbilly track. And Neil said, hell, I've been to Cadwell Park this year, this is good. Which I thought was an interesting comment. And Neil Hodgson's a very fair-minded man, as I'm sure you know. He's a thoroughly nice specimen.
Absolutely.
The surprise is that this is the USA, yet I'm working in a tent. There's no grandstands worth the name. Only get 50,000 people in, and it takes 2 bleeding hours to get out. This is. Yep. And to quote Anton Mang, this is the country that put a man on the moon.
Yeah, and Christian Cerrone, who stood in the pit lane, sort of almost crying when it was raining, he said, "This is California. This is California," he said. So, yeah, it is a bit of a compromise on all levels. Yeah. But the enthusiasm is very high, you have to admit that.
Well, I think I said it on the site last year, that there was a lot of cynicism flying about for the first couple of days, and everybody left realising, hey, we actually quite enjoyed that. That was good fun. And I don't think anybody got too stroppy, but with the caveat that we'd quite like things to work when we come back next year, please. And I think by and large it is working.
Right, but you're still working in a tent and...
Well, I work in a tent at Donington.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the internet's working this year.
Yeah, okay, so we're all right, as long as
and
we
the
can
power's
check our
working
email.
this year, and the screens are working this year.
Right. What do you think of the future of the event? Will the track continue to have to be...
The track will have to be smoothed out. I mean, that's the only thing I've heard anybody say. That it's so stupidly bumpy, especially T4 down from the corkscrew. That's got to be cured. Apart from that, I don't think people have really got a problem.
So there's no safety aspects that are raising their heads at this stage?
No, and even, if you think back a year, the guy who really, really thought the place was disgraceful and shouldn't be on the calendar was Marco Melandri.
Correct.
And look what he said first thing this year. This is really good. I like this track. That's the changes at turn 1 and going up to the corks. Is that T6, T7?
6, 7, right.
And Rossi himself said, they've done nearly everything we asked for.
I was surprised that the riders weren't more critical of the bumps.
Yeah, no, just all I heard was, it's the same for everybody. And I thought, hang on, is that a rider talking? That doesn't sound like the normal... But people have been, not really throwing their toys out the pram. I mean, Rossi's complaining that when he thinks he's got the line through the bumps, got it sorted, that next time round he goes 3 inches offline and the thing's all over the place. So he cannot operate with his normal precision, I think. That's frustrating him, but,
Smooth the place out and we've got a racetrack? Is that what you're...
I think that's what they're saying.
Okay. Well, thank you, Julian, for your time. I appreciate you joining us on this Soupkast, and hope to talk to you again on something along these lines.
That'll be fun.
This is Soupkast engineer Phil with all the soup operatives in the field at Laguna Seca. I'll take this opportunity to fill in and say thanks for listening and bid you farewell. Soupkast is brought to you by American Honda.